since taking office. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the administration has largely cleaned up a mess at the southern border they inherited from the prior administration.
According to CBP, Border Patrol apprehensions along the southwest border for the entire month of March 2025 were lower than the first 2 days of March 2024 under Joe Biden.
The Trump administration has faced backlash from Democrats over its deportation efforts and the legality of sending migrants to El Salvador prisons. Deportation efforts begin against the reputed East Coast transnational gang leader. Fox's Jeff Manasseh with a story.
A federal judge grants the Justice Department's motion to dismiss charges against Henry Villatoros Santos, who was arrested on weapons charges last month in Virginia. Charges the Department of Justice moved to drop to expedite the deportation process for the El Salvador native that they call a top leader of the MS-13 terror group, who was living in the U.S. illegally. The judge's order paused until Friday, giving the defense a chance to explore other options. Jeff Manasseh, Fox News.
After many unanswered questions, we're about to learn more about would-be Donald Trump assassin Ryan Ruth. Fox's Dana Marie McNichol reports from Florida.
Today's hearing will most likely focus on the gun found at the scene. Ruth's attorneys, they're hoping this could prove his innocence, while prosecutors are laying out new information to show Ruth's intent to kill President Trump. In court documents, the government laid out a long list of evidence they want admitted into the trial. This includes encrypted messages that shows Ruth allegedly tried to purchase a rocket-propelled grenade or an anti-aircraft missile from an associate he believed to be a Ukrainian with access to military weapons.
America's listening to Fox News.
Millions of Americans take medicine like Ozempic and Zepbound. Many of them are overpaying by thousands of dollars a year. These GLP-1 medications for diabetes, weight loss, and more may not always be covered by your insurance, but GoodRx can help. GoodRx helps you save every month on prescriptions at over 70,000 pharmacies nationwide. Best of all, it's free to use. Check GoodRx to save on GLP-1s. Just go to GoodRx.com/GLP. That's GoodRx.com/GLP. GoodRx is not insurance, but can be used instead of insurance, including Medicare and other federal and state-funded programs.
It's tax season. By now, we're all a bit tired of numbers, but here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much money in refunds the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now, here's a good number, $100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity's stolen, they'll fix it guaranteed. Save up to 40% in your first year with promo code CLAY. Visit LifeLock.com. That's LifeLock.com, promo code CLAY. Terms apply.
President Trump is still tweaking his tariffs after saying he may consider pausing auto tariffs. The next levy on his list is pharma drug imports. Fox's Jared Halpern with details.
President Trump plans to announce new tariffs for pharmaceutical imports to speed up domestic production.
It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come.
Still, the president told reporters exemptions for some sectors, especially electronics made in places like China, is not about second-guessing his strategy, but giving companies more time to adapt.
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. And you have to be.
The administration says scores of countries are seeking trade talks during a 90-day pause on most of the reciprocal tariffs announced earlier this month. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
China responded to tariffs earlier by halting delivery of 10 747 MAX jets from Boeing. Time is winding down for Americans to get a new form of identification to travel in the U.S. Fox's CB Cotton has more from New York.
Flying can come with a lot of headaches. You can avoid at least one of them by making sure you're ready for this May 7th deadline. That's when travelers older than 18 must show a real ID to board domestic flights or carry another accepted form of ID like a passport or U.S. military ID. If you show up unprepared, TSA says you may face extra screenings or outright denial. So what is a real ID? It's a state-issued driver's license with a black or gold star in the top right corner. The design means they meet the security standards required by the Real ID Act, passed in 2005 after 9/11, aiming to tighten security and fight fraud. In New York, CB Cotton, Fox News.
The TSA says 81% of travelers already use a Real ID or have an approved alternative ID. I'm Tom Rigotti. This is Fox News.
Well, again, everyone, let's check weather for Central Illinois, Champaign, and vicinity. String of these upper systems and reinforcing cold fronts on the move. Had one come through the overnight hours with a couple of sprinkles of rain, and some of those are up north of Champaign County again this morning on a third in a string of these cold fronts to come through the area. Temperatures later on today up around 55, and boy, that west-northwest wind 20 to 30 and gusty with a partly sunny sky developing as the later morning and more so afternoon wears on. Mostly clear, colder tonight, diminishing wind in the overnight. Frost forms up 2, low down to 33. Tomorrow, frost advisory early on in the day. Sunny skies, milder for the afternoon, 62. Clouds increase on Thursday. Breezy, milder up to 65, and a couple of showers late morning, more so for the afternoon. Windy and warmer. Good Friday, partly sunny, and perhaps an active day's worth of showers and thunderstorms. A high near 80. Cooler on Saturday with a couple of showers in the afternoon, 66. More shower and thunderstorm activity Sunday afternoon, in particular into Monday, 67 on Easter Sunday. Upper 60s on Monday. Brief drying around here Tuesday of next week. Voice TVJ Broadcasting, Abby Rochus, Greg Solgay.
Hey, what's up? It's The Drive with Zane Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. Derek Piper, Kyle Tosk. Welcome back, my friend.
Appreciate it.
Good to have you here. Lante catching some baseball. I know that his son Andrew had a huge senior night, 2 home runs, a grand slam. Look at him
Can't draw it up any better than that.
No doubt. We'll have to get an update. Lon said yesterday he wasn't going to cry on senior night. It's not their last game. They did it earlier in the season, maybe because they knew that Lon would be too emotional and how distracting that would be for the team if a guy out in the outfield or down the first base line is just bawling his eyes out. But maybe, he said he got his cry out when Rory won the Masters. He said it was the emotions came through the TV and got to him a little bit. So maybe he didn't have anything left. But regardless, congrats to Andrew on an awesome senior night and doing some big things at Mount Zion. Speaking of Mount Zion, we talked to Jeremy Warner yesterday about J.C. Anderson, and things sound like they're trending really well there. And man, Brett Bielema was hot on the recruiting trail. A top 10 class right now in 2026, and it's impossible momentum forward to keep adding pieces. What do you think about that?
I don't care that it's so early in the cycle. Seeing the Block Eye logo on the recruiting site at like number 7 in the country in football is awesome. It is incredible. And I think you get J.C. Anderson, you get a couple other guys added on there. It's not like they're going to fall from top 10 to 51st like we're used to or anything like that. This is going to be one of the best classes we've seen for Illinois football in a long time, really probably since the late 2000s. And it's just unbelievable. Brett Bielema is doing exactly what you would want coming off of the momentum that he's created, and that is capitalizing and starting to increase the talent level within the program. And I am fired up. I mean, football season, I know we're a ways away here. We got the NFL draft coming up next week, but I'm starting to get excited already for some Illinois football next year. It's going to be an awesome year.
If it wasn't so newsy yesterday with the recruits that committed, with basketball, the declaration by both KJ and Will Riley going into the draft, and Jeremy and I talked some portal. I meant to pick his brain on some spring football storylines and things that have stood out. I know he doesn't get a chance to watch those practices, or they get bits and pieces of them when it's open to the media. There's not a lot of that availability, but it is something I've also been thinking about in terms of we should probably spend a segment at some point of who are some players that need to take big steps forward. What are some big things that you'd hope from now in between, now until the start of the season, what is going to be important for Illinois to live up to expectations, which are going to be pretty high. They're going to probably be a preseason top 25 team based on the things that we've seen out there so far. They got a lot coming back that you're excited about. Of course, Altmaier, quarterback, is a huge piece, and really, really glad as we see the latest happenings in the portal, on the college football side too, with Nico from Tennessee. Man, just right before the spring game. No, actually, I'm out, and I'm gonna go to the portal, and maybe there are some rumblings out there that he may not get the dollar figure that he ultimately was wishing for and holding out for. So that would be really interesting. But
that's good, though. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah,
you guys have talked a lot recently, especially as it relates to basketball, about how crazy things have gotten. But once a guy starts holding out of spring practice as if it's like an NFL OTA or training camp because he wants more money, that's when it's like, okay, we've gone way too far here. I commend Tennessee for saying, no, absolutely not. We're not caving to you. I mean, and it's not, Nico's a good player. It's not like he's the best quarterback in the sport or like a Heisman candidate or anything. Maybe he could be in the future, but it's not. Maybe it's different if it's like a perennial Heisman candidate where Tennessee would be like, okay, we just, whatever, we're annoyed by this, but we have to pay him whatever he wants. I commend Tennessee, though, for being like, I think the quote that Josh Heupel, is that Tennessee's head coach? He was like, some guys feel like they're bigger than the program and we don't want those guys here. That's when it does get, I understand the wanting to be paid what you're worth. I understand even in the portal era where there's no rules or anything like that. Enter the portal, try to get as much money as you want. I guess that's what we're doing. But the second that a program that is invested in you, that's probably compensating you pretty well, especially for a guy of his caliber that didn't really have a great freshman season.
Especially in big games.
To hold out of spring practice over a contract or NIL dispute, I think is kind of the point where you look at that and say, all right, something has to change following this. Because if it becomes the NFL and college football where guys across the country are doing holdouts and demanding certain things, like that's when I think we've gone a little bit too far. And if your program's across the country looking at him and seeing what happened, I certainly wouldn't be like all over him. Like, I desperately want this guy a part of my program, knowing that that's what happened. And it sounds like, his dad's big involved there, which you never really want if you're handling a star player at the college level. So that situation definitely bothers me a little bit.
And he's very talented. He's a guy that's a 5-star prospect. And while he was a redshirt freshman last year, right? Not a true freshman, I think he was a redshirt.
I think so.
But a guy, again, that in the biggest moments for Tennessee, he struggled. He didn't turn out to be as in year one of playing at a top tier level, but I think quarterback needy teams, which Illinois fans know what that's like to be in that situation, there's probably a decent interest out there to be able to add someone late in the cycle. And that's one of the downfalls of having a second transfer portal window in the spring. I understand why it exists, because you go through spring practice and you can see where you're at in the pecking order, and it's benefited Illinois. Obviously, you got Zachary Franklin in that late window of the portal last year. I know that Terrence Brooks was another one that didn't work out as far as that goes, but it allows players to go through spring practice and see how things play out on the depth chart and give them another opportunity to move for the next academic calendar. But on the same side of it, you're probably agreeing to deals with players from a rev share standpoint when we get there. And that's the point I think that we continue to make, is once that goes into effect, it's going to add more protections to the programs, to the infrastructure of, we know what our roster looks like pushing forward, and a holdout isn't going to be able to do much in terms of as far as that goes, if it goes as planned. But I'm sure they agreed to. It's been, I don't know if it's been flat out reported, but there's been buzz out there that he was going to make $2.5 million for Tennessee, and that he was hoping to get $4 million from somewhere else. But now there's been reports of, hey, the North Carolina looked like an option. Now they're focusing on somebody else, and there was another place as well that maybe he won't get that full asking price. So, yeah, no, I like that from Tennessee's side of it, to be able to hold strong. Because how do you deal with your locker room? How do you deal with your other players, especially premium players, that are paid a good chunk of money, that then are like, whoa, so we can just sit on the sidelines or not show up for practice and we'll get more money too? Like that, I know it happens in the NFL, but it does create a bad precedent. And
but even outside, like you said, even with just outside of Tennessee, the precedent that it would set across the country if Tennessee said, okay, he's holding out a spring practice because he wants $4 million, we'll give him $4 million. No questions asked. He's doing that. The precedent that would set for everybody else, in terms of, we'd start to see this all over the place. So Tennessee, I think, stopped this from spiraling across the country, hopefully. Now, maybe it continues to happen, and maybe ultimately it's going to work out for Nico, because he's going to enter the portal in some quarterback-needy team, which if you're a team that has quarterback questions right now and Nico becomes available and you have money to spend, you probably will try to get past whatever side issues there are and at least show some interest in that. And especially, let's say if it was a quarterback that has proven more than Nico has, I think you wouldn't have it'd be pretty easy for that player to enter the portal and have a bunch of the top programs come calling and offer him whatever he was asking for.
Mm-hmm.
But I do hope that Tennessee holding strong and saying we're not going to fall for this, go ahead and enter the portal, we're not doing this, maybe stops it from a situation where you start to see this trend accelerate across college football, especially for these top quarterbacks, where now you're seeing holdouts become a common practice in spring football, which would be a disaster.
It's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. That is something that you don't want to see pan out. I've gotten For You tabbed here recently. That's what I'm going to call it on Twitter. If you click on, which I have, the Nico, the news cycle that's been out there, the articles, the tweets about him and what that thing's going to end up as. And what ended up popping up on my timeline is a message board post on a Tennessee, one of those sites. You might have caught the same thing, but it was like a quarterback wish list for Tennessee. And guess who was in the top 5? Luke Altmaier, Illinois.
Oh.
But it does sound like, and I heard this admittedly secondhand, but I know a couple people that are plugged in pretty well around football, that Altmaier had maybe an SEC feeler during the offseason that, hey, you'll get more money if you enter the portal and make your way back down south. But obviously he stayed loyal, stayed steady at Illinois, likes the development that he's had, likes the familiarity that he has created with Brett Bielema, with Barry Lunney, and that offense and the way that they were able to utilize him this past year. And also, it's not like he's not compensated here as well. So whatever they did, and Brett's done a great job retention-wise, and I do think that it's hard to compare sometimes basketball to football because they are different in terms of each decision is so unique for a player. What Marez Johnson's deciding to do doesn't necessarily mean it is casting across. Although I think it's fair to wonder why maybe Illinois basketball hasn't had more retention. I do think in a large portion of it is they're trying to upgrade. They're trying to push the thing forward and say we can do better at this spot. And there's a lot of opportunity to go out there in the portal and do so. In football, maybe it's not as easy to do that, or it's more risky to do that. And it's worked out. I think it's great that Bielema has been able to keep some guys at home, whether it's delay the NFL draft decision for a year or decide not to go look another place. And Luke Altmaier, obviously, keeping him is such a huge part of keeping the arrow pointed up and potentially having some could say that it could be a bigger year next year. 10 wins is hard to top, but it's something that people are at least going to think about on the high end for Illinois football this upcoming year. And Luke being there is obviously very much a key part of the equation.
It is pretty miraculous how little attrition there's been from Illinois football in this era, given where Illinois stands. Now, obviously, what Bielema has done on the field with an 8-win and a 10-win season is remarkable, and I think that has a lot to do with it because guys feel like you actually have a chance to win here at Illinois now. But just in general, like with all the money being thrown around, with the free-for-all in the portal, the fact that no big-time, high-level starting caliber player has decided to hit the portal from Illinois to go chase money at an SEC school is pretty remarkable when you think about that. I mean, even going back to last year, I know maybe Illinois didn't have a ton of guys with what they were losing. Like Pat Bryant hadn't necessarily proven to be what he was last year heading into last year, but like a Gabe Akis or somebody like that, like those guys coming off a 5-win season where you didn't go to a bowl game and you still keep all those guys and you still bring guys back NFL-wise on the defense. And now heading into this year, obviously it's a lot easier knowing what you could be, knowing you have high expectations to win. But coming off last season with all these guys that could have gone to the NFL draft, or a guy like Luke Altmaier, like you said, who's proven a lot at quarterback, none of those guys have left. All those guys have stayed. And let's face it, Illinois isn't swimming in money for football in comparison to what some programs are across the country. I'm sure, like you said, Illinois' top guys are getting paid quite fine, but it's not like Illinois has unlimited money to just keep everybody 100% happy with the top dollar figures like some of these SEC teams could, or even just higher level Big Ten programs. So just the fact that, I mean, can you name a guy that's been a high level starter or a younger guy that you had high hopes for in the future, making the comparison to basketball that's left, and you've been like, oh, that's a tough loss for Illinois? Not to disrespect anybody that's left, but
right.
I don't know if I can name one.
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I can't. Obviously, in terms of the premier players, you were able to convince Keith Randolph and Johnny Newton to come back for another year.
How much money could Johnny Newton have made from an SEC program heading into his final season?
That's what I was thinking, for sure. That's part of it. So you do want to think of guys that would have real open market value, and obviously those two would have been in that category. I think that Pat Bryant still, as an older guy with some upside, could have gotten a nice paycheck if he was available last year. It's easier to say now that we saw him have a 10-touchdown season, but I know there was, I wouldn't say worry, but there was wonder when Corey Patterson left, what would Isaiah Williams do with one more year? And obviously he stayed at Illinois. I think in terms of like following him to Purdue, that was, I know they had the Rondale Moore, although that was Jeff Brom there. Ryan Walters would have been in a whole different system, and as far as that goes, you're probably in the same pool, or you'd hope to maybe even have more money than Purdue would.
Well, speaking of Purdue, there's a program that's gotten absolutely gutted by the portal. All of their star-level guys that they've developed have left.
You're right.
And I know that they had the coaching change with Brom, and then obviously they didn't have much success under Walters, but still, there's the example of what could happen if your program just gets continuously poached and you're not giving them a reason to stay.
Good point. No doubt about it. So that's really encouraging, and you hope that it sticks like that in the future. If you continue to win, as you now are going to factor in the rev share money, which I've been curious as far as football goes, how has that worked with compiling your roster? And I would have to ask probably Jeremy Warner on this to get the best answer. But with so many decisions having happened in December when the portal was first opened, and you're trying to sign guys to stay for deals like that, or guys are going to move and decide to go to different places, at that point, rev share is not obviously operational. It's more of a projection of what we think it's going to look like. And there have been pretty clear guidelines, at least in terms of, all right, it's going to end up being, it's $22 million. No, it's $20.5 million. Okay, there's no Title IX. It's going to go into effect, if getting approved, it will go into effect in the summer. Is Illinois and other Power 5 football programs just all of a sudden going to have $14 million to just dole out across their roster coming in July? Have they already committed to certain, this is where it's going to go here? You obviously haven't spread the money out yet, but it's something I've wondered about, because that's so much money.
I do wonder
for a guy like Nico, that could be part of his decision. Is like, all right, someone could promise me a big chunk of their rev share that's about to kick in a few months, and that could be my way to cash in.
I was kind of asking this question last week as it relates to basketball, but that's kind of what you said there is what I'm curious about, because I would assume that as for both basketball and football, there's guys that have either signed something or there's been some type of agreement laid out for revenue share money already. Even though it's not technically in effect yet, that money can't get paid out yet. I'm assuming that most programs know what they're getting. Their athletic director, whoever's making these decisions, has laid that out to coaches, and you realize how much money you're going to have, and then you've probably already acted on most, if not all of it, in terms of sitting down with players and saying, this is what we want to offer you. This is kind of how we see things going. We can't pay anything out yet, but there's kind of an understanding, whether it's a contractual agreement. I don't know if those things are going to happen with rev share. I wonder that. But some type of understanding or agreement that this revenue share money is bound for you. We have to wait till it formally gets approved. But I feel like most programs probably have a good idea of where all that money's going player-wise already.
I would think so. And I have a much better gauge of it on the basketball side. And I was told within the last couple of weeks from a coach that, yes, that is being used as of right now, like immediately, as part of the roster building efforts. Not to, again, like you said, pay it out, but to have it be part of your pool of this is what we can afford, and however that needs to go. I would, maybe we need to get an agent on. Do they need to do Trilly Donovan style and use a voice alterer, and we won't say the real name? I don't know, but to get somebody to talk about how the language is written, assuming it is it would be really risky for somebody to just do a handshake. Yeah, we'll get you that money once it comes here.
There's got to be contracts now, right? Or at least some type of written.
There definitely is for NIL, and there will be for rev share. Can you sign the rev share deals now, or something that has like some speculative language in it that says once this goes into effect, you will be in line for this? And of course, I would imagine if something were to fall through with the settlement, then you'd be protected with the language of the contract to say, well, it didn't go through, even though there's no indication that that's going to just completely evaporate on the floor of, where is it, at Congress or wherever it ultimately is.
Would be utter chaos if it didn't go through this offseason, though, right?
Right, exactly.
that would be madness.
Right. I think on the basketball side, and we will talk plenty of basketball, though speaking of football, Brett Bielema met with the media yesterday and want to get you the latest update from spring practice, which we'll be able to hit you with as we go along. But from a basketball side of things, and we will talk portal, there's always happenings there. Adam Miller, I want to get Kyle's thoughts on the potential reunion between him and Illinois, the latest happenings with that one, because it does sound like there have been some movements in terms of the players in that one, the money in that one, and we'll see as far as that thing goes. But I think from Illinois' standpoint, now I haven't heard this like an on record or this is official, and we will talk to Brad Underwood tomorrow at his Coaches versus Cancer event there in Gordyville. But I feel like Illinois, from a roster building standpoint, has spent a lot of their NIL pot, if not maybe even close to all of it. And I had somebody tell me today that their belief or understanding is that future additions from here on out are going to be rev share deals or rev share pot, in terms of them dipping into that to then fund the rest of the roster. So that could give you a snapshot. The settlement still hasn't gone through yet. If Illinois were to come upon more money NIL wise, and you could fundraise on the fly, there could be somebody that if you have a guy locked and loaded to commit to you, maybe you can go to your donor base and say, hey, just could you help us out here and not have it count for our rev share? Like, say if you had Adam Miller ready to commit, or say if you had Ian Jackson, Dame Sarr, could you make that thing happen? But it seems like from Illinois' side of things, again, not official, but it does make sense because I think they've spent a good amount of money to get up to this point via retention, getting Big Z, getting Mirkovic, and then going forward, that rev share money, which I think is probably going to be, again, I haven't been told an exact figure. I think it's probably going to be in the $4 million range, maybe give or take another $1 million on the high end. I don't think it probably goes below 3.5 to 4, but I had been told maybe $4 to $5 million on rev share, which we could talk about if that's the way it is, how would you spend the remaining $4 to $5 million?
So that would indicate that the guys that are currently signed, sealed, delivered on Illinois' roster is their $4-ish million NIL pool, or whatever NIL pool you have, and they
had 4 this past year. I think it might be a little higher this year, but maybe we could try to speculate, but maybe 5.
But even that figure doesn't matter as much. But you're under the impression that they haven't really spent any revenue share money yet, or maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit, but I think that most of that
almost
is still
all
intact.
is available. Okay, so that would leave about maybe a little less to up to about $4 million left to spend to add.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to be, and I think that needs to be used. I think
it needs to be used.
I think that's what, or not needs to be used in that sense, more so like you need that much in order to build this
100%.
roster to the caliber that I think it needs to be, because I still think there's multiple bigger additions that are probably still necessary for this Illinois team.
Yeah, I think within that, and we'll talk more about it, but the money is still there for a real big splash. And you got to get that right, because that will be most likely your highest paid. It will be your highest paid player. Maybe you only can afford one of those ultimately, but I think that's something that is still, as you'd imagine, very much well within the capability of Illinois. Now that from a role standpoint, Will Riley's out of the fold, at least he's going through the process, and we'll see how that goes. We'll talk more. I want to get Kyle's thoughts too. If anything stuck out to you about the announcements from KJ and Will yesterday.
And on that point, too, I know I wasn't here to talk about this, but with that big amount of money available, watching the Nike Hoop Summit over the weekend, I would really like if some of that money was used on Dame Sarr because he looks phenomenal. He looks like a stud.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that as we go along for sure. Hit us up on the Max Twin City Recycling text line, 217-359-2255. Get your thoughts on spring football. I do got to answer a question or two when we come back about Illini football recruiting that popped up on the text line. And we'll talk plenty of basketball. Adam Miller, Dame Sarr, Ian Jackson, and look at this roster as it is right now. And what if there is $4 to $5 million left? How would you spend that going forward? So we'll talk about all that when we return. It is The Drive.
Are you ready to upgrade your home this spring? Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing has got the sale for you. Offering a free water heater with the purchase of a new HVAC system. Or 60 months, 0% interest on financing for a new HVAC system. It's the biggest sale of the year. Call Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing at 217-841-4728. Get a free quote for your home today. It's 217-841-4728. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend.
Attention all truck drivers looking for a new opportunity with great pay and amazing benefits. Gale Frericks Trucking has got you covered. Join their team, receive a $4,000 sign-on bonus. That's right, $4,000 just for coming on board. Plus, enjoy a $1,200 gross weekly pay guarantee. Drive their state-of-the-art Freightliner Cascadia trucks equipped with a revolutionary system designed to reduce weight and downtime. Get home every weekend and some nights during the week with paid vacations and holidays. They offer company-sponsored health insurance and all the benefits you deserve. Regional drivers get first priority. Don't wait. Apply in person at Dedicated Diesel, 1313 Triumph Drive, Urbana, or call Tim at 765-505-1295. That's 765-505-1295. Start your journey today with Gale Frericks Trucking.
This is XYZ Insurance. How can I help?
I have a question about my home policy.
Okay, question about phone policy.
Home policy.
Okay, gnome policy.
HOME, home.
Technology is great, but sometimes it's better to talk with a real person. With Erie Insurance, you have a caring, independent agent who's with you from beginning to end.
We don't have any HOMEs on record.
Your Erie agent in Champaign is Thomas & Ellers Insurance. Go to erieinsurance.com for company licensure and product details.
You've set your financial goals. One kid plans to go Big Ten, the other Ivy. Your bucket list includes seaside sunrises and sunsets on the slopes, or perhaps a second home away from it all. Busey Bank can help develop the right investment strategy to take charge of the years ahead. Busey Bank, building business, growing wealth since 1868. Proud to be the official bank of the Fighting Illini. Member FDIC.
Preventative care is a key factor in maintaining your overall health. Don't delay your health care. If you haven't already scheduled your annual wellness checkup and any recommended screenings and immunizations, do it today. Christie Clinic primary care physicians have same-day appointments available. Talk to a Christie Clinic physician about important screenings and immunizations. You don't want to delay. Make an appointment today at ChristieClinic.com and click on online scheduling. Take care of yourself and put your health first.
Race weekend, April 24th through the 26th. Illinois Marathon.com.
Get the roof your home deserves by Roof Doctors, your residential roofing specialist that has always offered the best warranties in the industry, like our non-prorated 50-year warranty. Our customers love that we are family-owned and locally operated. We make our customer needs our top priority. With over 30 years experience and the best customer service, give Roof Doctors a call today for your free estimate at 328-7529. In your community and for your community, Roof Doctors.
Want unbeatable prices on your next furniture purchase, but also seeking that local hometown feel? Look no further than Kelsey Furniture in Tuscola. Customers rave about their friendly, established staff, as well as their great selection, amazing prices, and second-to-none delivery service. They're a third-generation local business, and they've always got your best interests at heart. Find the look you love for less. Open 9 to 5 Monday through Saturday, but always available online at kelseyfurniture.com. That's kelseyfurniture.com.
Hi, I'm Tyler Weaver, president of Carpet Weavers Flooring and Furniture Gallery. It's time to come home to Carpet Weavers. We don't want you to just like your new floors. We want you to love them. From waterproof floors and carpet to furnitures and design advice, we've got a team of experts on your side. We'll get you the best price and the best quality products. And complete your home with furniture and accessories. Buy it all with free financing too. Come home to Carpet Weavers, where floors, furniture, and family meet.
This one, my friends, is on Kyle Tosk.
Totally my fault.
Man.
I take full responsibility.
We jinxed it. We really did.
I mean, the timing on that is one of the most insane things I've ever seen.
I didn't even necessarily plan to go down the route of talking retention via Illinois football.
Me neither.
But we just naturally
The thought
got
just
there.
popped into my mind. I thought I'd share it.
It's a great point.
2 minutes later, it's all for nothing.
Cheez-It Citrus Bowl MVP Josh McCray has entered the transfer portal. That via On3, breaking the news about, you said 15 minutes ago?
Mm-hmm.
Literally mid-first segment.
He might have entered. They might have released the news while I was talking about it, mid-sentence of Brett Bielema has lost nobody important to the portal. Then he hits it. So that's on me. I apologize to everybody out there. That is 100% my fault. Couldn't have jinxed it more if I tried.
I guess we should just stick talking about basketball and potential options there.
What are we going to jinx next on the basketball front?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't
boy.
know. Let's talk about McCray, though. How big of a loss is this? Does he now categorize as a huge loss, a guy you definitely wanted to keep?
Absolutely. Yeah, coming off what he did towards the end of last season, where it felt like he really turned a corner. Because let's face it, before the last maybe, 4, 5, 6 games of last season, really when Fagan went down and it was Lawfrey and McCray getting the bulk of the carries, he just didn't really look himself. The version that we saw as a freshman, it just felt like every year we were hoping to get that version back of Josh McCray, and he had been so unlucky with injuries and not being able to stay on the field. Then last year, he's on the field healthy. Early in the year, it took him a while to kind of get back into a rhythm, look like the guy that we thought he could be. And then he was awesome down the stretch of the season. It felt like he had finally gotten his feet back under him and was ready for a huge final season here, to where I think if you would have asked me in this first segment before we heard this news of Illinois' top running backs, who would you feel most confident about or maybe would project to get the most carries, even in kind of a split backfield, I probably would have said McCray. I feel like he's a guy that, the oldest of all of them, a guy that Bielema trusts, and just the way he finished last season, he was so good in that Citrus Bowl game. Definitely a tough blow. I do think you feel okay that it came from the running back room, because you do feel good that you have a lot of really good options there still with Lawfrey and Fagan and even Valentine and some of the freshmen coming in. But this is definitely the first one, legitimately the first one in the Bielema era where I feel like, man, that one hurts, and I would have liked to keep him.
Can't believe as far as how that lined up. But ultimately a guy last year, like you said, once he really – and they needed him to, with Fagan's injury, to be able to take over on getting a good amount of carries and finding a rhythm where early in the year he looked slow, it seemed. Yep. And although I'd say kind of the same thing for Fagan at times, when he really wasn't able to reach the level. And I want to talk about Fagan here in a little bit, but on the McCray front, really that Purdue game, which, of course, the overtime thriller, 16 carries, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns, also had a receiving touchdown, so 3 total scores in that game. Minnesota, 72 yards on the ground, a touchdown. And then that Citrus Bowl, 114 yards on 13 carries, 2 scores, wins the MVP, 5.2 yards per carry on the season, 609 yards rushing, 10 touchdowns for Josh McCray. And it is hard to project right now how that, at least on the outside, and I'm not as close, obviously, as far as football goes, but what that carry split would have been going into the year between Josh, Caden, and Aiden Lawfrey. And it's interesting because I was just telling you during the break, I pulled this up on Atlanta Inquirer, Joey Wagner just wrote about McCray a couple of days ago as part of his notebook, and was talking about how McCray is trying to play faster and is as confident as he's ever been, and is coming off of a real momentum season where now maybe he plays his best football going forward. And I know that Marcus just said on the Max Twin City Recycling text line, what in the world, we stick with him through the injuries and he finally has a chance to start and he leaves. I would imagine that, yeah, he did probably have a chance to earn that primary role. Again, is it going to be a situation fully healthy between Lawfrey, Fagan, and McCray that it's like a 50-25-25 share? I don't know that, but it's a guy that looked really good down the stretch of last season, and it is a big loss. Matt says not only is McCray a big loss, but you have to raise the question, does that now bring the running back out of the tight end room, back to the running back room?
That'd be Jordan Anderson.
That's right. Yeah, this one stinks for Illinois. Although, like you said, you do have depth there. And let me get that to you now. How am I supposed to feel about Caden Fagan, a guy that obviously had a really good freshman year? And I'm not totally, out on him or down on him to the point where I don't think he's going to be a really productive Big Ten back again. But there was so much hype going into the season. He's on Bruce Feldman's freaks list and gets compared to like Derrick Henry in terms of the size and strength. I know that Derrick Henry's a different animal, but ultimately a guy that, again, looked kind of sluggish. I don't know if that was a product of Illinois just trying to figure it out with their front, with whatever it might have been, establishing the run game, which they struggle with, and maybe Fagan breaks out if he's healthy later in the year as well. But how do you feel about him? And his importance is now even more so with McCray out of the fold.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think everybody, including all three of us here, were so high on him heading into last year, and he was kind of seen as the guy in the backfield. You knew that McCray and Lawfrey were going to factor in some capacity, but Caden Fagan was viewed as like, we want this guy touching the ball as much as possible. Could he be an all Big Ten caliber back? Does he have that ceiling to him? He still does, but now he's coming off a major injury where I think it was a hip injury that he had surgery on. I don't think he's been out there yet in the spring. So you're coming off such a major injury for a guy, the hip for a running back who is moving so much and cutting, and his game is so predicated on that type of stuff. You worry about what it could look like in the immediate aftermath, as we saw with McCray, who suffered multiple pretty serious injuries, and it took him a while to really finally rejuvenate himself back to the type of guy that you thought he could be. So I don't really know how to feel about him. Me personally, with McCray in the fold, my outsider's view of the running back room was I thought it was going to be McCray and Lawfrey in some order, the top two guys, with Fagan kind of the third guy as he works his way back from injury, a guy that'll probably still play, get carries, but I didn't really necessarily think he would maybe be his workload would be maybe as heavy as those other two guys. Now I think you're counting on him to be a pretty important part of the backfield. Maybe he does recover fine and looks like the guy that, again, just similar to McCray, really awesome freshman year that left you excited. I just worry about a serious injury like that and what that could do and just how much time it might take him. So really, I think the guy that it really is on now is Aiden Lawfrey, because his opportunity is huge now to be your true number one back, and his carry total probably just got maybe 100 bump or even more than that now.
Yeah, and he had 16 carries in that Citrus Bowl against South Carolina, 67 yards on the ground. In the regular season finale against Northwestern, huge game, 12 carries, 172 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So he had some really good moments last year as well, and of course you get more speed and elusiveness out of that position when he's there. So that's something to look for ultimately as he can hopefully build on that. But I know injuries continue to be with Fagan. He missed, although he played 9 games as a freshman, but you do wonder if he can stay healthy for a full season. You hope that, that's some things that players can't necessarily control. But yeah, I mean, it was a leg hyperextension that led to some hip issues, and then misses the final 8 games down the stretch of last season. And I think that's a good way to frame it ultimately, is maybe it would take some time to get some footing for him. And McCray seemed to be a guy that, again, had some real momentum leading up to this season, and that runway for him and Lawfrey to maybe be the top 2 options would have made sense going into this year. So we'll see how that changes.
Yeah, it's just insane, the timing on that. I mean, it is my fault, I guess. He was listening to the show and said, "Oh, really? Brett Bielema hasn't lost anybody to the portal. Well, let me change that right now."
Khalil Valentine, is he going to get more opportunities? I like some of the flashes. What was that? Was that the Kansas game that he really had some big carries in?
It was, yeah, down the stretch. He was the guy in there when on that game-sealing drive for Illinois that picked up a couple first downs.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see where it goes from here. Hopefully this doesn't lead to just some craziness. We already got enough basketball craziness portal-wise. We don't need a spring period that gets nuts on the football side. But
would Illinois look in the running back market in the spring portal window now? Not necessarily to get like a starter caliber guy, but just another guy you feel like you give 110 carries to or something?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. That's a question we should – I know that Marcus said need to get Joey Wagner on. We tried yesterday. He's under the weather, and we ultimately pivoted Jeremy, which is obviously a fantastic pivot. But we'll try to get Joey on, hopefully maybe later in the week when he's feeling better, and get his thoughts on that, which I'd be interested. I think that is something from an insurance policy standpoint. I wonder if that is somewhere they'd be interested.
Because I was kind of thinking about, does Illinois really have any glaring needs in the spring portal window? I don't know if there really is any.
The fact that we can't immediately point to one is a good sign, isn't it?
It is a really good sign. Imagine how many things you could have pointed to almost any other year.
Right. They really addressed, hopefully, I mean, it's hard to replace Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant, but you get Hudson Clement and Justin Bowick. That was a couple of nice additions. You hope Malik Elzy is ready to take a sizable step forward. Hank Beatty. So they got some options in the receiver room, and then being able to get some help on the defensive front this past offseason as well, or current offseason, however you want to look at it.
Maybe one more offensive lineman could be a need.
Could you use another? I feel like you could always use another defensive tackle.
Yeah.
It was T-Raw Edwards that was trying to get an extra year, and he didn't get that?
That's a good point. Yeah, so, the fact that they were really not that. I mean, he's a really good player, so if you have a chance to get him back, but they felt like they were very disappointed that he didn't get that waiver, which maybe tells you that they would be in the market for a guy that could do some similar things.
That'd be nice. You got a couple of those Wisconsin transfers, and Neal as a nose tackle, and obviously Thompson as well as a defensive end. But yeah, maybe one more D tackle. Again, you could probably never have enough of those if the money's there and if the right piece ultimately is there on the football side. How about we catch one more break, and then we'll come back and talk some hoops. Adam Miller, what's the latest with him? The Peoria native in the portal, and some options popping up for him. We'll talk about that next. That is The Drive.
Spring is here, and as the weather heats up, the sports action heats up at Circus Sports Illinois. From baseball to basketball to hockey, Circus Sports has it all. Circus Sports Illinois isn't just sports betting, it's sports betting the way it should be. High betting limits, tight money splits, and exceptional customer service. Whether you're looking for playoff futures or props on your favorite players and more, Circus Sports has you covered. Download the Circus Sports Illinois app or visit circusports.com today. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hi, this is Pam Moore with Philo Exchange Bank. Whether you want to do your banking online or you prefer face-to-face interaction with our friendly staff, Philo Exchange Bank delivers banking that helps you reach your personal or business goals. To us, you're not just another face, you're a part of our family. Visit us at any one of our locations in Philo, St. Joseph, Allerton, or Broadlands, and we'll be here to help.
Philo Exchange Bank, hometown community banking since 1883. Member FDIC.
It's time for spring cleaning, so why not turn your clutter into something amazing? At the Habitat for Humanity of Champaign County Restore, your donated furniture, appliances, and home goods help build homes, community, and hope right here in Champaign County. Dropping off is easy. Bring donations behind the Restore at 1914 Glen Park Drive during donation hours. Call 217-359-0507 or visit cuhabitat.org to schedule. Declutter your home and change lives. Donate to Restore today.
Fighting Illini fans, your Illinois football team is coming off a 10-win season as Citrus Bowl champs. This fall, Illinois returns 18 starters from the Citrus Bowl victory, including star quarterback Luke Altmaier for a third straight season. Led by head coach Brett Bielema, the The Fighting Illini are listed on nearly every major top 25 ranking for the 2025 season. Stay up to date on all things Fighting Illini football at fightingillini.com. We can't wait to see you back in Memorial Stadium this fall.
Sarah Champagne managing partner Ben Quattrone on why integrity is important at Sarah.
We hire the person. The person makes the deal. The person makes the department. The person makes everyone around them treat people with courtesy and respect. If you have a quality human being, you can play any position, right? We're talking about sports. They can perform in any department, and I could teach someone a job, but I can't teach them to be a good person.
Learn more at sarahchampagne.com. That's SERRA champagne.com.
Tired of trying to keep up with Old Man Jones and his perfect lawn? Spring Green knows that we can't all spend hours a day creating that perfect shade of green, peeling off all that crabgrass and making sure every insect in the neighborhood doesn't call your lawn home this year. At Spring Green, they take the hassle out of your lawn headache with services such as lawn fertilization, weed control, grub and insect control, lime treatments, and even bush and tree care. Let the experts at Spring Green help you this season. For more information, visit them at spring-green.com. Spring Green, America's neighborhood lawn care team.
I'm Justin Ike, co-owner of Fred's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning, Electric, and Underground.
So, Justin, tell me what you see as typical when it comes to sewer repair. Give me a scenario.
Your sewer's backed up and somebody comes along and says, you need this repair for X amount of dollars. Here's my price. And you don't think to go looking for another company or a second opinion because you don't feel like you have time.
So is it possible that you might get charged a little more because it's kind of a desperate moment? Do some companies do that?
Oh, absolutely they will. They know you're in a pinch. Typically, if you call us, me or Will can be out there within an hour to look at that problem for you. Whether you call me first or you call me second, make sure you give me a call.
Anything else, Justin?
You can always trust Fred's.
Great to know. Thank you. That's Justin Ike, the co-owner of Fred's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, Electric, and Underground. If you want more information about this great 45-year family-owned company, just go to fredscu.com. That's fredscu.com.
Back on the drive with Sam Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. Let's talk some basketball, shall we? Peoria native Adam Miller in the transfer portal. A list has been released. I forget who had it last night. It was John Rothstein, of those who are involved with Adam on the front end in terms of expressing interest. And I will get to a little bit as we go along of what I've heard as far as some of the big pushes for him immediately. Some teams to know, and let's just go there, I guess. On the front end, Baylor, Texas, Indiana, Gonzaga, some of the ones that jump off the page, of course, in addition to Illinois. I have heard that he has multiple offers north of $1 million. I think that's not necessarily where Illinois landed originally. We'll see if they get there. I think that's probably what it's going to take from Illinois' side of things to be able to get it done, and we'll be into the seven figures, I would imagine. Which I know that for some out there, and you kind of got to, even myself included, you've got to get past what $1 million got you, even in the last cycle. Like KJ and Will Riley were $800. $800. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? $800,000 each, and the top priced guys on your roster. That as far as a range goes, $800,000. Before that, Terrence was like a $750, $800 type of guy. That doesn't get you a star-level player anymore. Terrence Shannon in open market would get, what, $4
That
$5
barely
million?
gets you a starter.
Yeah, right.
Not a star level. That barely gets you, as we see with Adam Miller now, but just barely gets you a 3-and-D wing that averages 9 now.
Nuts. And that's kind of the predicament that Illinois is in a little bit, where the funds, it might be pretty clear as far as how much you have left. Again, what if it is $4 million? Would you be willing to give $1 million of that to Adam Miller, knowing you still got to make a really, really big splash, and maybe even ideally you add one more bargain piece to that as well? Is that a backup ball handler? Is that what ultimately is that gonna be? So I think that's interesting. We can talk more about the money part of it. I want to get your thoughts, maybe taking into account if it is going to be a 7-figure addition. But what do you think about Adam Miller, a guy that averaged around 10 points a game last year at Arizona State, shot a career best 43% from three, has been a willing defender. Are you high? I sent you and Lon the same text in the group message on Saturday night. I told you that I'm as shocked as you guys as I am sharing this with you, but that Adam Miller is a legit option, which seemed very real at the time, and that maybe even Illinois was going to be the favorite. I don't know that they aren't anymore, but it is now maybe more of an open chase. But what do you think about Adam as an option?
I think it would be a really nice addition to this roster. It was just so surprising to hear that, because we've seen this across the country where guys will transfer out of a place and then go back, or even if you're Michie Johnson and want to do it twice. So it's not like it's been unprecedented, but it is for Illinois. Like we've seen so many guys leave Illinois, and we just haven't experienced now the other side of it, where it's like a guy who transferred out now wants to come back. And so my immediate reaction was just surprise. And also I did question, like, okay, wait a minute. Didn't Adam Miller leave with some bad feelings of some type? Or it wasn't just like a Coleman Hawkins, like, hey, just go cash in your last year. Luke Goody, hey, go play for your home state.
Yep.
It's okay. It was Adam Miller started every game as a freshman, left, and some of the rumblings were that he just wasn't happy with how he was being used, or whatever the case may be. He just didn't feel like Illinois was the right place for him. So to hear all of a sudden 3 years later, now he wants to come back to Illinois, it's just so surprising. But clearly that's the case, and assuming that he's a guy who clearly, I would imagine, if this is a real possibility, enjoyed his freshman year at Illinois, feels like after going to LSU, going to Arizona State, not being a part of very good programs and winning teams, realizes what he had at Illinois, realizes the opportunity that's in front of him, not to be necessarily your leading scorer or a star player, because that's not what he's developed into, just to be a piece on a winning team and a guy who can help your backcourt, which you desperately need help right now. I'm all for it. I am all for adding Adam Miller, because you look at his numbers last year, elite shooter last season. Now, it was kind of an anomaly based on what he's done for his career, but it was a big sample size of almost 5 3-point attempts a game, shot 43%. I know you shared the catch and shoot numbers that are like 98th percentile. Like, this is one of the best shooters in the country. I'd imagine he's still been, based on what he showed as a freshman, at least an above-average defensive player, a guy who can help you, a guy who has some size. I know he's not the longest guy, but he's pretty built and can give you a little bit more size alongside Boswell in the backcourt. So I think he checks a lot of boxes of what you need in a piece in your backcourt. Is he going to solve all your holes in terms of being like that splash, big-time addition that you're still searching for? No, but I think he would be a really solid piece to add and can help you in a lot of areas. And it doesn't hurt to have a guy, even if maybe things didn't go great the first time, a guy from Peoria coming back home for his final year as a 23, 24-year-old repping Illinois, which he clearly, if he wants to come back, still means something to him. I think that is a positive.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of that. The more I've thought about it, the more I've liked it from Illinois' standpoint in terms of the fit as a role player, a piece to the equation that would have a chance to start if he shows worthy of that. Would also, depending on who Illinois also could add, and I think I could see a scenario. I'm sure Brad hasn't even allowed his mind to go down this route or spend too much time thinking about it. But could it be where one of Adam Miller or Ty Rodgers is in the starting lineup and the other one is maybe your first guy off the bench? I could ultimately see that being something that plays itself out that way. But however the case, you're talking about somebody that would be 23 years old, would turn 24 the middle of next season. He's played 117 games for a high major team, starting 115 of those, and he's coming off his best shooting season. Again, like you said, he's been a very willing defender, and Illinois could use that. They could use somebody on the perimeter that can help aid Kylan Boswell in locking some things down, and maybe Ty Rodgers guarding the right guys from a matchup standpoint can be somebody else that is a plus defender and helping that front court with those guys on the perimeter. And I think Brad is very interested in pushing this forward in terms of getting older and having that experience. So I think that the relationship between Adam in particular and Illinois has never been bad, really.
Okay.
It's more about his circle that very much forced his hand and had gripes with Illinois and as far as that goes. And I think it's different now for him where, he's probably not caught up in all the, here's what you're going to be. You're coming out as a highly touted high school guy, should play in the NBA and all this stuff. And he's now a college basketball journeyman. And I think that the idea of playing for a winner, from what I've heard, is very much attractive to him. But he is commanding money. He's got demand. And we can talk
I don't like the fact that Baylor, Gonzaga, Texas is but Baylor and Gonzaga do some winning themselves. So that's not great to hear, but
they do. We can talk more about the money side of things and what Illinois needs to get and how would you try to plan if you're Brad Underwood and Company spending $4 or so million the rest of the way. So we'll tackle that. We'll get to your questions as we go along. We'll hear from Brett Bielema before we get out of here. Stick with us. It is The Drive.
You're listening to WSJK ESPN 93.5 Tuscola, Champaign-Urbana, your home for the St. Louis Cardinals.
The globe after President Trump paused his tariff plan for more than 75 nations. Fox's Edward Lawrence is at the White House.
The White House line is the first country in to make the deal will get the best deal on tariffs. And there's been a slew of countries that have come to the table with this. For example, that Argentinian delegation was here in Washington at the end of last week negotiating. And today, the Treasury Secretary is in Argentina meeting the president. And he says that it's their choice in Argentina if they want to be the first. So today in the U.S., the U.S. Trade Representative talking with Jordan. Tomorrow, Japan comes back here to Washington, D.C. Now, he spoke to delegates from South Korea, Israel, Vietnam, and the European Union. The big question, who's going to be first? Now, in my exclusive interview with the top European Union negotiator, we can say that the EU will not be first.
China remains the exception, with a trade war escalating between Washington and Beijing. Police in Texas responding to a shooting at a Dallas high school. Students could be seen leaving the campus this afternoon at Wilmore Hutchins School. Sources telling Fox 4, 17-year-old student was shot in the leg. No word on a suspect or a motive. America is listening to Fox News.
Did you know you can get your prescriptions for less at your local pharmacy? You can with GoodRx. It's the free app that can save you money on your medications. Just search for your prescription, choose the pharmacy and the price that works best for you, and then show your GoodRx coupon to your pharmacist at the drop-off counter. GoodRx works at over 70,000 pharmacies, including Walmart, Rite Aid, and Walgreens, and it works whether you have insurance or not. It's easy to save. Next time you drop off your prescription, check GoodRx. To start saving today, go to GoodRx.com. GoodRx is not insurance.
It's tax season. By now, we're all a bit tired of numbers, but here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much money in refunds the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now, here's a good number, $100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity's stolen, they'll fix it guaranteed. Save up to 40% in your first year with promo code CLAY. Visit LifeLock.com. That's LifeLock.com, promo code CLAY. Terms apply.
Today is tax day, when income tax returns are due. Republicans marking April 15th with a push to make President Trump's previous tax cuts permanent.
Republicans are trying to use tax day to tell voters help is on the way if they can pass their tax cut bill. The tax cut package renews the Trump tax cuts from 2017. They expire in December. Here's what happens if they fail to extend the tax cuts. A married couple with 2 kids earning $165,000 gets slapped with $2,400 in taxes. Here's another one. A single parent earning $52,000 is docked with a $1,400 tax bill. The child tax credit also shrinks. Democrats oppose what the GOP is doing. They argue the bill provides tax breaks for the rich.
Fox's Chad Perkam in Washington. Meanwhile, Doge looking to change things up at the IRS. Fox Business Network's Hillary Vaughn on Capitol Hill.
Well, most Americans had to write a big fat check to the government today to pay their taxes. Over 100,000 federal workers are not paying their taxes on time. In 2021, the IRS found that almost 150,000 federal workers owe about $1.5 billion million in unpaid taxes. Over 5,000 of them work at the IRS and owe $50 million in overdue taxes. Even though the IRS can fire its workers that are not paying their taxes, only 20 people have been terminated. That double standard is something Senator Joni Ernst, Senate DOJ caucus chair, wants to stop. She's introducing several bills aimed at cleaning up the IRS. One bill would require IRS employees to be audited every year and fired if they don't pay their taxes.
And so far, Doge claims to have saved American taxpayers $155 billion in counting. On Wall Street, stocks have been volatile as late today. Well, stocks finishing in the red. The Dow fell 156 points. The Nasdaq dropped 8, while the S&P 500 gave up 9 points. I'm Tom Graham, and this is Fox News.
Hello again, everyone. Let's check weather for East Central Illinois, Champaign-Urbana vicinity. It's an increasingly active and moisture-laden weather pattern getting ramped up over the course of the Easter holiday weekend and beyond. Even a couple of sprinkles around, especially north of Champaign. For this morning, a partly sunny afternoon, brisk and chillier at 55. The northwest wind 20 to 30 and gusty. Winds will ease down on the overnight. A mostly clear, colder night. Late night frost forms up. Pay heed to that frost advisory. Low down to 33 and a frosty start to the day tomorrow. Sunny skies, milder, lighter wind. And 62. Clouds increase, a breezy milder Thursday with a couple of showers breaking out, especially the afternoon up to 65. Could be a stormy Good Friday, partly sunny, windy, warmer up near 80 with a couple of rounds of showers and thunderstorms. Cooler Saturday at 66 and a couple of more showers for the afternoon. Keep an eye on sunrise services and the Easter egg hunt on Easter Sunday. Mostly cloudy, showers and thunderstorms breaking out probably in the afternoon. Up to 67, more showers Monday and a high near 68. For TVJ Broadcasting, I'm meteorologist Greg Soldier.
It is The Drive with Dan Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. We'll get to your text as we go along. 217-359-2255. Max Twin City Recycling text line. I know we did have somebody ask earlier in the show, 217, where is Illinois football ranked at in the Big Ten with their 2026 recruiting class? It's third in the Big Ten as of right now, according to 24/7 Sports. I had that pulled up here. Now, it's still early, but USC is number 1 in the country, so that puts them obviously at the top of the Big Ten. Ohio State, number 2 in the country, 2 Big Ten programs. Then it goes Clemson, Notre Dame, LSU, Texas A&M, and Illinois at 7th.
It's your average group of college football powerhouses that you'd expect to see.
Right. It's kind of funny to see number 7, Illinois, number 8, Kansas.
Kansas, man.
Yeah.
Leipold's really getting it going there, too.
Syracuse 10th. That's not a program I'd normally expect in that range. Again, it is on the earlier side of things. The fact that Ohio State only has 2 5-stars at this point tells you that there's still a lot of time to see where that goes. Oregon has 2 5-stars. Ohio State has 2 5-stars. Yes, Illinois currently ranked higher than Oregon in the 2026 recruiting rankings. Take a picture. It's like the saying when you do a bye game in basketball, you pay no slight to them, but just to not offend anybody around here, Central Arkansas State, you pay them $1 million to come up and get beat by 100. They are leading after the first 2 baskets, and they call a timeout and take a picture of the scoreboard. That's where, not to say Illinois is Central Connecticut State or Arkansas State is what I said in football, but it's one of those take it in while it lasts moments.
Again, though, they're going to fall. They're not going to be in the top 10, but they're not going to fall to 50th either.
Right.
This is going to be a really good class. I think it could be. I'd want somebody who follows it closer to tell me if I'm wrong, but could finish top half of the Big Ten,
Sure.
which would be huge. I mean, with some of the powerhouses, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, now adding USC in the mix. Like, if you could be in the top half, top 8 or 9, that'd be phenomenal.
Yeah, why not? Why not? When you look at the starts that they have,
or even the top 6 or something, if you want to aim a little higher, but it'd be awesome.
It is one of those where you go into any given recruiting cycle and you're going to assume Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon,
yes. Who I didn't mention, yes, Oregon,
Penn State. Most likely would end up above you, right?
Yep.
USC, I just said, is number 1 in the country as of now. That's 5 on top. Is there another? That's probably the sure bet.
You could theoretically be the 6th behind those 5 with a really strong class, which I think is possible the way it started.
And I don't think that's to say every single year that you're going to get beat by all 5 of those schools. In most years,
It's
yes.
a safe bet, though.
It's probably a safe bet, right?
I'd be curious to know over the last 10 years how often those teams haven't been. If you assume that Oregon and USC were in the Big Ten, like, how would those rankings fall? I think almost every year it'd be that top 5.
I would think so. I would think so for sure. Yeah, I know if you want to go all the way back, which has been a long time, but like Ron Zook's class of Aurelius Ben and Juice Williams, that would be a year that you would maybe even topple one of those traditional heavy hitters in recruiting. But
I mean, this class is shaping up to maybe be the best one since that class, potentially. I feel like it's possible.
Yeah.
I guess you had one Lovey class was rated pretty highly because it had, Marquez Beeson and Isaiah Williams in the same class. Do I have that right? Both those guys were.
Yes. Yeah. Remember how big that Marquez Beeson was thought to be?
Man, if he never got hurt like that second practice.
Wasn't Calvin Avery in that class too?
He might have been.
4-star defensive tackle out of Texas.
So there was one really strong Lovey class, but this one at least will be right there with that one.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think even as you look in state, the other possibilities still remaining. I know Jeremy Werner has had a crystal ball and still is in for Illinois for Nasir Rankin, who's a top 100 national talent, the number 2 player in the state of Illinois. If you could get him, who I know he's an athlete, plays receiver and defensive back, if I have that correct.
Brad Underwood chipped in a little bit on that recruitment, right? Offering him a basketball spot.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be fun to see.
If you get him and then one of the tight ends, either Sutter or J.C. Anderson, unbelievable. It'd be the best headliners of a class that we've seen in a long time, because that top, especially when you talk about the in-state aspect of it. I know Singleton is from Ohio, right? But that'd be a stark change in terms of what kind of talent, especially from Illinois is bringing in and attracting itself to.
Yeah, Rankin, the second-ranked player in the state. J.C. Anderson, the third-ranked player in the state, 154th nationally. And again, Jeremy just said yesterday, coming off of JC's official visit at Illinois, that they seem to be tracking really well in that recruitment. He did say, why are you asking me? Why don't you ask the guy with the Mount Zion plugs with Lante, obviously Andrew playing.
I am a little disappointed that Lon hasn't done a little bit more digging for us.
Maybe he knows more than he lets on. I could totally see that. Although, Lon's a talkative guy. I think it'd be hard maybe for him to keep a secret on that, but we'll press him when he's in tomorrow. So we'll see what he says on that. But I know I'm looking on JC's profile on 24/7 Sports. Official visits that are listed: Auburn in May, North Carolina in June. Bill Belichick and his girlfriend need to stay away.
How has Belichick been cooking on the recruiting trail? I haven't followed it.
I haven't either. I should pull back up those national rankings to see if North Carolina is anywhere to be found. They are 12th nationally.
It is pretty hard to
cooking that up already.
A Bill Belichick hardcore press and recruiting. Probably tough to go up against now.
I would imagine so. Yeah, I think that they probably have a good financial backing and just the idea that you could play for one of the greatest of all time in terms of coaching, development, the connections he has in the NFL. They'll be a factor for sure. And I think that this debut season will be very interesting as far as that goes. But yeah, I know that 217 said, "Hey, 6th in the Big Ten, the new Big Ten is like 3rd overall in the old world." So it's definitely something to be celebrated. and something that's very, very exciting. And the idea that they're not done, they still have some big pieces. Arguably, their biggest pieces still in state. Not even arguably, there are their biggest pieces still in state left to add. That's all super exciting. So, congrats to Illinois on what they've done thus far, and we'll definitely keep you posted and talk about where that goes from here. Wade asked, as far as basketball goes, can you explain how foreign players can play professionally overseas, come here and play as a student? It's a good question, Wade. I know that you went through the process with Tomislav Visic as a guy, and we didn't – when the ruling came out that he wasn't a freshman, he was actually a sophomore, upon all that they were able to dig into there, they didn't say, all right, here's all of our findings on what we were able to uncover in terms of this is what he made. I know that kind of the baseline expectation is that you can, as a player overseas, take a stipend for meals and those type of things. You're not supposed to have, a full-fledged contract in terms of being able to then be eligible to play in the NCAA.
Is it possible that Mirkovic will have a year of eligibility stripped, just like Tommy coming from the same team?
The fact that he's coming from the same team makes me wonder if that could be the case. Now, he is younger than what Tommy was, but he spent 2 years on that same team. Him and Tommy played for the same SC Derby team, not this past season, but the year before that. So I'm sure that he will go through the same process of trying to get approved by the NCAA. I think that one of the really interesting things for me trying to figure it out, because there's a prospect or two that comes across the radar, and you dig in and you see what you can hear, and guys that have a buyout with a professional team. I think that's really interesting. Like, how does that get paid out? I mean, I could imagine that you could take care of that, although you got to be careful in terms of what you're allowed to do. But how does that get figured out in a current NIL situation and from an eligibility standpoint? I think that's one of the really interesting things about those that are playing for professional teams.
I mean, to go back to the original question, it's insane to think that a player that has a professional buyout clause in a professional contract can then come over and be eligible to play college basketball. It doesn't seem like it'd make much sense.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't. But
at the same time, nothing makes sense anymore in terms of NCAA roster movement. So why should that?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I think that is something that I don't have a firm answer on, but that's something that I think players that are preparing themselves to be eligible in the NCAA, and now I think maybe that becomes a cleaner thing for them to position themselves with. But my understanding has been, yes, you would be to stay as an amateur player, you would not take a traditional contract. You would take a stipend and still have your eligibility. But that is something that, again, we don't have full transparency on these deep dives the NCAA does and what they uncover. And again, it's kind of like you can make NIL in high school as a high school player now.
Yeah.
So what would be wrong with a player internationally taking some money from a pro team?
Yeah, that's the part of it that really does make sense, is that, well, now players are making millions of dollars all across the country, so why are we being so firm in terms of eligibility rulings over guys making money? Because everything's about money now in college basketball, so why would that – so that's a good point, because, yeah, I mean, to punish guys or to strip eligibility from guys because they made money when you've got guys like A.J. DeBonstick coming in about to make 7 point whatever million that was negotiated while he was in high school. Like, come on now. Yeah.
He's already made some money. I don't know what it is, but he's already doing some major endorsement deals, which he should. I mean, he's that high profile of a player. I don't have any problem with him making that money, but it is something that, from a comparison standpoint, now I know then if you're going to just open it up and be like, anybody that's made money can come over to college and have eligibility remaining, then you might have a guy who's 28 years old in Serbia be like, hey, there
has to be an age limit. I mean, to play college basketball. Well, But then again, some 28-year-old will point to some 28-year-old coming back for his 7th medical redshirt year this year and say, well, he can do it.
Chad Baker-Mazzaro disagrees with you. He's what? 20? He's 25 right now.
He's going to be 26
and
next
trying
year.
To get another year.
I think he has another year. It's not even a question.
It's not even a try.
At least I think.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Come on.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I
guess I'm wrong on that. They can't do an age limit because we've got guys that are coming back to play at age 27 now, so that's not going to happen.
Yep. Pretty wild.
Well, hopefully that's going to end here soon, right? I know Adam Miller technically is playing on his COVID
He's
year.
a COVID
next
year player.
Right? Because he missed an entire season, but that's going to almost be completely gone, maybe except for a couple guys who have had multiple knee surgeries or something next year that still have it. And then we're going to get back to 4 years, maybe 23 will be the oldest in college basketball, maybe an occasional 24-year-old.
Yep. No, you're right. We should have.
That'll be great.
Fully cycled out of that.
That'll be really great.
It will be. It will be. Before we catch a break, old friend AJ Storr has found his landing spot. Ole Miss with Chris Beard. What do you think about that?
I'm not totally familiar with what Ole Miss is bringing back or what that roster looks like, but that just from hearing AJ Storr Ole Miss, it feels like it kind of makes sense. Not that I have a great explanation for why. It's just, I don't know, Chris Beard, feel like he probably was offered
the land of second chances?
The opportunity. That's a good point. Yeah, good point. I feel like he'll have opportunities with the ball there. He'll be a guy that morphs back into more of that Wisconsin level role, or at least will have the chance to there at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I know they had a really old team last year, so I imagine they're trying to piece together some guys.
Yeah, I think they're losing a lot from last year's team. They were one of the oldest teams in the country, 3rd nationally in D1 experience ranking on KenPom. And Beard's done really well with transfers before. I like the gamble. I don't know what the price was. I can only imagine, what you think that someone should go for, and then calibrating and being like, oh, well, insert name here made this. And like, okay, this market's all out of whack. But if you got him at a decent price, which may even still be $1.5 million, if you got him for less than that,
calling that a decent price is just
isn't
insane,
it crazy?
But
though?
It is. $1.5 million is like, yeah, if you get a guy with the potential to be like a leading scorer, go-to type for 1.5, you have to consider that a steal in this market.
Right. Yeah. I think if they got him for less than that, between 1 and 1.5, I'd be surprised if it was less than $1 million.
Oh, absolutely.
It'd be very unlikely to land in that area. But I kind of like the buy lower or buy at a decent level and have high upside, which I think AJ has. But we'll see if you can get it out of him, because obviously this year was a train wreck at Kansas. So
I could see it working out for sure. I think there's absolutely a world where it works out. From Illinois' side, I was very skeptical about it coming off of that year at Kansas, and just knowing the fact that Illinois really wanted him and then kind of backed off of him the year before, and there's always some outside noise involved with him, it feels like, and just the constant movement. It would be a really big risk. Could be a huge reward, but I wasn't totally comfortable with Illinois doing it. I could see it working out at a place like Ole Miss, though.
For sure. This offseason, man, the fact that Adam Miller could come back to Illinois, Ty Rodgers returned, Merez Johnson left. Make all that make sense.
Could you imagine saying those three things right after Illinois lost to Kentucky?
No. Those are such the inverse of what I would expect.
Lay out the craziest few things that could happen this offseason that nobody would believe. Go. A couple of those probably would have made the cut.
Yep. Absolutely. So that's where we're at right now in college basketball. I know we got a couple of questions still on the text line about Illinois basketball, which we'll get to before we get out of here. Brett Bielema, we'll hear from him. His press conference yesterday breaking down the latest with spring practice. No, you won't have any questions there on Josh McCray because that news just dropped today, but we will probably get his take on that before too long. All right, before we catch a break, let me do a little work. Let me tell you about Busey and spring cleaning your finances. The season for spring cleaning is here, and while many may be focused on organizing closets and scrubbing floors, Busey encourages you to clean up your finances too. A couple of tips from Busey. They've got 7 of them. Evaluate and pay down debt. Review your budget. A lot can change in a year. Determine areas where you can cut back. Check your credit report. Take advantage of credit report consolidation with Busey. Sign up for e-statements and paperless billing, keeping your house physically and financially organized. Set up your automatic bill pay and never worry about missed payments impacting your credit score. Consolidate your accounts, close accounts you rarely use, and download the Busey mobile app. Manage your finances whenever you want, wherever you are, with Busey's mobile and online services. Get started on your spring cleaning today with expertise and innovative products and services at Busey. Busey.com or visit one of their many convenient locations. Busey, member FDIC.
Hey, where are you headed?
To Kelsey Furniture in Tuscola.
What do they have there?
What don't they have there? Living room furniture, benches, chests, love seats, sectionals, tables, bedroom sets, hutches, nightstands, end tables, cabinets, mirrors, stools, clocks, lamps, pillows, rugs, desks, media consoles, patio furniture, Tempur-Pedic mattresses, and more.
So, everything.
Yeah, probably could have just said that.
Kelsey Furniture, quality for less. It's time to become familiar with Salon 105, an upscale salon. Meet Morgan, one of the talented stylists at Salon 105 in Mahomet.
So I do a lot of lived-in color, blonding, brunettes, natural-looking reds, extensions. I do kids cuts. I love doing what I do because Kelsey has a very unique way of cultivating an environment that people just want to be in.
And what makes the environment so special at Salon 105?
Oh gosh, it's inclusive, it's genuine. I don't feel like I have to, try and be cool. I can be myself. And I think our clients experience that also. I have a guest who came in and she pulled me aside at the end of the appointment and she was like, I'm very appreciative to be here because I feel like I belong here too.
To book your appointment, go to salon-105.com. That's salon-105.com.
Hey, all you backyard chefs and grill gurus, barbecue season is here, and I know that you're anxious to fire up that smoker or grill, but your yard needs mowed. Yes, your wife is getting hangry, but that grass isn't going to cut itself. What's an aspiring pitmaster going to do? Get the world's fastest mower, of course, a Dixie chopper from Dedicated Diesel in Urbana. They carry a full line of Dixie choppers from the Z2 and Magnum residential models up to the big Excalibur and classic commercial machines that can mow nearly 8 acres an hour. This is award-winning competition pitmaster Tim Onstott, and whether I'm cooking low and slow or hot and fast, I always have time to savor the flavor because my mowing time is cut down by Dixie Chopper, the world's fastest mower. Get your Dixie Chopper at Champaign-Urbana's only dealer, Dedicated Diesel, at 1313 Triumph Drive in Urbana, 217-328-0562.
Hi, this is Chris Vandeventer with Philo Exchange Bank. We've defined hometown banking for 14 decades. We've been a legacy of trust and dedication. We believe in the power of community, where every neighbor is a member of our family and not just another name. Unlike many other banks, our lending decisions are made within the walls of the bank. Quite simply, local banking means you get what you need quickly and efficiently.
Philo Exchange Bank, hometown community banking since 1883. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Are you tired of shivering in the winter? Look no further than your local heroes at ABC Heating and Air Conditioning. Hi, this is Gina inviting you to give us a call at 217-352-5400 to book your appointment to make sure your furnaces run safely and efficiently this winter. We've been proudly locally owned and operated and have been serving our community for over 50 years. ABC, always be comfortable. Call me 217-352-5400 to book your appointment today or go to abcheatingandac.com.
You have money laying all around your house. You just don't know it. And no, I don't mean selling your great-grandma's good china. I mean all the old metal items you don't want to use or get rid of. Don't pay someone to haul it away. Bring it into Max Twin City Recycling and get paid to have it taken off your hands. They love new customers and are more than willing to walk you through their process step by step. Come check them out at 2808 North Lincoln Avenue in Urbana.
Starting it over is what we do at Max Twin City Recycling.
You've changed thousands of diapers, played hours of peekaboo and duck duck goose because you do anything for your kids. That's why it's so important to protect them with life insurance from State Farm. State Farm agent Kurt Lenschow will help make it easy and affordable to help you protect your family no matter what the future holds. Because for the people you do anything for, life insurance could mean everything. Call State Farm agent Kurt Lenschow in Champaign-Urbana today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Back on the drive with Tim Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. Let's talk a little bit more college basketball, transfer portal. I know Kevin said on the Max Twin City Recycling text line, what timing do you think as far as getting another basketball player from the portal? It's a good question, Kevin. I think with Adam Miller, what I had been told, now things can change as dollar amounts go up and you get more competing suitors, that originally it was probably going to be a pretty fast process, that he could be a guy. That's really all I was told. I wasn't given a firm timeline. Would it be a week? And he'd already know. Now, there have been a good amount of examples, especially when a player kind of has a good idea of where he wants to go, that it could maybe be a week. Like Big Z was in the portal for a week and then doesn't take a visit, and obviously then ends up at Illinois. Does Adam even need to take a visit to Illinois? He's been there plenty, both obviously as a player and even before that as a recruit. But as there's been buzz coming out about, above $1 million offers from a handful of especially good programs, is that a situation where he wants to then go visit a handful of those? We'll see as far as that plays out. But I would have told you and still would tell you that Illinois seems like a decent option for Adam. And I think that Brad is, as far as what I've been able to gather, is I think Brad's pretty bullish on the idea of adding Adam back to this team because of the boxes he checks with being an older player, with being a premium three-point shooter, at least that's what he was last year, and then be a very capable defender, if not even potentially a plus defender, like he was as a freshman. And I know he has the ACL tear and doesn't seem to be a quick, I wouldn't say he's not a quick twitch athlete. He's not an explosive off the ground athlete, but I think he is even last year graded out as a pretty darn good defender. Beyond that, I think you're talking largely about guys that seem to be, maybe take a little bit longer. Dame Sarr, we still don't know what that timeline is going to look like. Honestly, if I'm advising Dame Sarr, I feel like the longer, if you wait a little bit longer at the very least, it probably benefits you. I think you want to see what happens with, if you really want to consider Duke, I would imagine that you got to wait that thing out as they're figuring out, is Isaiah Evans going into the portal. There's been a lot of smoke for NC State being as a landing spot for him. Is Tyrese Proctor not coming back? What's Nate Ament going to do? The 5-star who played in the Nike Hoop Summit as well for the USA team. So I think that's part of the equation maybe for him, and then he's got to decide, does he want to go all in on the NBA draft, at least to see what the feedback would be and to go to the combine and those type of things. So he's a guy, he's in between Adam Miller, Dame Sarr, and then Ian Jackson as well. We'll see if Illinois gets enough traction there to get a visit and make a big push for a guy that has a high price tag. We mentioned before, probably a $3 million type of commitment financially to be able to get him. He took the St. John's visit. He went to USC right before that. St. John's has widely been considered to be the team to beat, but the fact that he hasn't committed yet does give you a little bit of what's going on there? Is there a window to still try to get a foot in the door and see what you can do. So that's where I think Adam could be one of those pieces that would be on the quicker front. At least it looked like that as he went into the portal. Maybe that's changed now. Other than that, you're probably waiting a little bit longer. And we'll see within the next week. It's literally a week from today. The portal will close. That night. Once the clock strikes midnight, going into Wednesday of next week, the portal's closed, and everybody that's in the portal is available, and everybody that's not in the portal cannot get in after that point.
You just start to get kind of impatient at this point, I think. But knowing how much Illinois still has to fill on its roster, you just want to see something happen. Now, you got the Mirkovic news, you got the Big Z news, but you'd love to get a guy like Adam Miller locked in, even if that's not going to be, like we said, it's not going to be your big, huge money, although based on the dollar figures you laid out, maybe it will be significant money, but not in terms of like your big splash that you still need, whether it's in the backcourt or on the wing, that we still think Illinois needs, whether that is Sarr or somebody else. Miller doesn't fill that, but you'd love to just get something filled, because there does reach a point where you start to worry a little bit, especially if the portal closes and you still have, let's say, 3 needs that you want to fill and a lot of money to spend, but you don't have anybody locked in or even close. Then it starts to you start to race against time as well. And so I do hope that Illinois, I think just adding a guy like Miller, I think would do a lot just to boost morale and just feel like you have another big piece locked in. But I am a little bit concerned about Sarr, because like you said there, you know who it doesn't benefit for him to wait as long as possible? Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it benefits Illinois all that much if he continues to drag it out, because you're just opening, whether it's, would he get invited to the NBA Combine or no?
I think based on the way he's played here recently, I feel like he would have a decent chance to get invited. I think he'd be a guy, it sounds like there's input from teams on who they want to see. I think he'd be a guy that they would want to be able to monitor and watch and see him work out more, because even if it's not staying in this draft, I think gathering all the intel, as a potential lottery guy in 2026 is something they'd be interested in. That's just my gauge on it. That's assuming, but I believe that would be the case.
Because if he gets an invite to the Combine, why wouldn't he continue to delay the college decision, assuming this is a guy that wants to perform as well as possible and all the pre-draft stuff and go to the NBA? I mean, he's draft eligible. If he has the opportunity to be a first-round pick, you'd think that would be his number one priority, and he'd want to give that as much of a shot as possible. I worry about him at the NBA Combine doing pretty well based on what his measurables are and just some of the testing that I think he would do well at. Not that, again, I think sometimes it gets overblown because teams realize Dame Sarr's physical traits already. It's not like someone's going to be blown away that he measures at a 7-foot wingspan and has some athleticism to him. But I do think he's a combine guy that could probably help himself in that type of setting. And then even if the NBA doesn't work out at that point, or he doesn't feel like he's a first-round pick, just the fact that it'd be late May and the portal would be long closed, I mean, he'd hold all the cards at that point in terms of saying, all right, I want to go to college, but I've delayed the decision. Now Duke might be desperate. Now who knows who else is like, ooh, we didn't fill our wing need in the portal, and we got $2 million sitting here, or $2.5 million. Dame Sarr's available. Now we're going to jump in the mix and try to outbid teams. So that one concerns me a little bit, but I really hope it works out for Illinois because he was awesome in that Nike Hoop Summit. He's a really good player. I think he'd check so many boxes for Illinois. I think he would fit them all. I've been skeptical in the past, just not knowing a ton about him. Like, would he qualify as like a splash addition? Like, is he the guy that you want to be the highest paid guy on your roster? I think you could make an argument that is worth it based on the type of player he is. It'd be a risk for sure because you'd be going in on another young guy just like you did last year. But we're talking about a guy who's absolutely going to play in the NBA. I mean, he's so long. Like the 7-foot wingspan, like, yeah, that's what jumped off the screen at me in that Hoop Summit, and just how active he was, and even a couple of the drives he had to the rim where his strides are so long that it doesn't take him much to power his way into the paint with his length, and got to the free throw line a bunch. He hit a deep three in that game. Like, he looks like a guy who could come into college and be a heck of a player. I think Illinois should be doing everything they can. Not that they haven't been, but if he could get him locked in, I think the mood of this entire offseason changes in an instant.
And I'd love to see what Fletch could do in 5 months.
Absolutely.
From June going into the start of the season. The fact that now Will Riley was a twig, really, when he came in, and Dame has a little bit more of a base there. He's not the same type of slender, but if Will added what? He said 22 pounds going into the season. Like, what Dame Sarr could turn into. Now, it might be, more of a full year project to really make his body what you want it to be, but that could be a big part of turning him into a real impact college player, hopefully, and maybe because of his playing experience with Barcelona's top-tier team, the way he's been at this point, playing at 19 years old, might be more ready to hit the ground running than Will Riley was. And, he's played at the early level that KJ didn't really get much opportunity to do when he was coming up through Barcelona.
Could he lead a high-level college basketball team in scoring next season? Could he lead Illinois in scoring next season?
He could, right? He could. I think that's a good question.
Would that be the expectation? Because I feel like you kind of still want to add that guy if you're Illinois, right?
I feel like you would. And that's where I've wondered about this with Illinois. I think from an ideal standpoint, I get why some people might sit there and say, hey, if it's one big splash remaining from Illinois, why can't it be two? I know it's always easy on the outside, especially when it's not your money, being like, hey, how are you not spending more money? If you could get Dame or somebody in that category to make a decision quicker, and you can go via the NIL route and say, maybe you've already, between Kylan coming back and Tommy coming back, and Ty probably took a decent. I don't think he was probably $1 million player, but getting him back and adding Z, adding Mirkovic, I could see how you spent, if you did. This is me projecting, between all the pieces that you've gotten so far. I would be surprised 0% if you said that's $4 million, maybe even $5 million, depending on how certain negotiations went. So if they're like, we're out of NIL, I get it, but maybe that's one where, last year it somewhere along the line, Illinois went from like, hey, it's probably going to be $2.5 million to, hey, they spent $4 million. Like, could you get it a little bit higher if Dame was ready to pop? If whoever, fill in the blank, if it's Ian Jackson, if it's somebody else in that realm, so then RevShare can add even one more of those guys. That'd be ideal, but it does seem like right now it's probably one of the big splashes, and then like a role guy, even he's going to be paid like one. It sounds like a premium role player like an Adam Miller. I think that is probably the range you're talking right now for Dame. But yeah, if we knew, if it's what the roster is, or let's say it is Adam Miller and Dame Sarr with Kylan, with Tommy, with Z, is he the highest? Could he be the number one scorer on that team? I think he could.
I think he'd almost, based on how that roster is built, and assuming, like, let's say you get Adam Miller now, and then Sarr's kind of like that last big piece, and you kind of know he's going to be your highest paid guy, the expectation would be for him to probably be your best player and leading scorer. Yeah. Similarly to what KJ and Will had to bear last year. Now, KJ did lead you in scoring, had a great year, but that would be the expectation for him. So even if he comes in and is good and impacts things, is a good defensive player, but he doesn't score it or isn't like the go-to offensive option that you were hoping for, I think that'll skew people's view on who he is. Mm-hmm. And so I just wonder if you would feel at all confident that Sarr could handle that type of load or that type of role.
I do feel like, in seeing what he looked like at the Hoop Summit and watching the highlights, but also the production with Barcelona, he shot the ball from three better than I have thought him to be. If you would have asked me about him in December, based on what I knew and what I dug into stat-wise, I'd call him an inconsistent three-point shooter. He'd been a guy that was up and down, and who knows where he would land on that. Recently, he's looked like a guy that could comfortably shoot 35+% from three at the clip that he's been shooting it at. And I know it's still, if you judge the whole sample size of Barcelona, it's a smaller sample size because he didn't really become a rotational player until the middle of the season. But I think also his athleticism, man, going to the rim, especially, again, if Fletch could add some strength to that, and he's a guy that can draw contact and get to the free throw line, he is an open court danger.
Yes.
Like being able to get from, like you said, with a couple of strides from midcourt to the rim. I'm not saying he's Terrence Shannon, but he is a really exciting athlete. So
I think you feel like he can handle the ball just like Will Riley did, right? He's not going to be your primary ball handler. It's still going to be Kylan, but you'd feel like you have a really good secondary option there of a guy who can create and handle it a little bit. He definitely showed that off, too, on Saturday.
I agree with that, no doubt. I know we want to play Bielema before we get out of here. Before we catch a quick break, Mirkovic, what'd you think of him?
Yeah, he had a good first quarter and kind of disappeared. But I don't know, he just feels like a guy who his game is really mature. He's not a guy who's going to blow you away with any one skill, but he has a great feel for the game. He made himself available a lot just for whether it was working in ball screens with whoever that point guard was on Team World was.
He might go to Purdue.
Is that right?
Omir Mayer?
Is he going to be the Braden Smith
he might be
replacement?
The Braden Smith replacement.
You're kidding me. He was awesome in terms of running that show for Team World, but you saw him run some pick and roll with Mirkovic, find him a couple times, and just feels like he's got an advanced IQ and feel for the game. And I'd love to see a bigger sample size of his jump shot because I know the one shot he took, he got fouled on one, and then he took one that was like in and out and looked pretty good. So I'd love to see some more of that. And he didn't get a ton of chances to handle the ball, although I think there was one possession where he kind of rebounded it, took it up the floor, and I think actually found Sarr for a bucket.
Yep.
So he at least showed that part of it off. I think he'll be solid. I'm interested to see. He's definitely got a lot of offensive ability, and I think he's just a guy that's you're going to feel really comfortable with on the floor in terms of the way he processes the game and the feel he has and a lot of different things he can do.
Yeah, like a good player for sure. Still have questions defensively, and
he didn't look awful.
He didn't.
He moved pretty well.
He moved better than I would have expected. And again, we're talking about give Fletch 5 months. Give Fletch 5 months to try to work on Mirkovic's body, and we'll see what that looks like ultimately. So I get why they wanted to make that push, and could be a nice piece for Illinois. All right, let's catch a break. Let's get you Brett Bielema before we get out of here, and then we'll wrap the show after that. Stick around. It is The Drive.
At Carpet Weavers Flooring and Furniture Gallery, we're flooring people with amazing service, great design advice, and unbeatable selection and the best prices in town. It's the perfect time to update your home with waterproof flooring, carpet, hardwood, tile, and more. Then complete your rooms by shopping our incredible selection of furniture and accessories. We also offer great financing options. Carpet Weavers Flooring and Furniture Gallery, we're flooring people.
We're talking to John Reichert from A&R Mechanical. 100 years in our community. So many buildings in this town, like Memorial Stadium. Of course, the State Farm Center. Can you remember the reaction of the company getting that? Because that's a big one.
Oh, that was huge. If you just think about it a little bit, everything we put in is straight, pipe is straight. We're putting all that into a round building. And, it took a lot of know-how to make that project happen. It was one of the first projects we did using our new technologies. And the timing was just right. We were the right people for that project, and I think we did it successfully.
The legacy of A&R. John, I could almost say, what haven't you built? Up and down campus, the Siebel Center was fairly new for computer science.
Everybody was working as a team, and I think it came out very well.
A&R Mechanical has helped build Carl at the Fields expansion and other Carl projects in Provena and Sarah Bush Lincoln. The list goes on and on. Visit them at ar-mech.com.
Winter's finally over.
Time to thaw out and enjoy the sunshine. But is your yard ready? Part of the trusted 2 Men and a Truck family, 2 Men and a Junk Truck can help you ditch the clutter and create the perfect outdoor oasis. From old patio furniture to forgotten fire pits, 2 Men and a Junk Truck, a member of the 2 Men and a Truck services, will haul it all away. Get ready for cookouts, parties, or just chilling with a good book. Make space for what matters most. Visit 2menandajuncktruck.com today. Use code radio25 to save $25 on your next service.
The sounds of spring and the smell of flowers in the air, they all add up to Spring Green, America's neighborhood lawn care team. They become your favorite through quality service and professionalism. Spring Green will service and maintain your lawnscape with seeding, aeration, fertilizing, disease, and insect control. Over 32 years of satisfied customers reflect their commitment to Champaign-Urbana and the Mattoon-Charleston area. Call Spring Green at 217-359-2111 or online at spring-green.com.
Jets is hiring. Call 217-352-9992 or stop into 1907 West Springfield Avenue near Round Barn in Champaign. Jets is open till 10 p.m., Fridays and Saturdays till midnight. Are you looking for a side hustle? Here's Josh from Jets talking about the benefits of doing deliveries.
When I was a delivery driver, it was amazing how much the actual amount of money I had just shot right up. It's hard to describe. You have money in your pocket every single day.
For details on joining the team, visit jetspizza.com.
It's tax season. By now, we're all a bit tired of numbers, but here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much money in refunds the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now, here's a good number, $100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity's stolen, they'll fix it guaranteed. Save up to 40% in your first year with promo code CLAY. Visit LifeLock.com. That's LifeLock.com, promo code CLAY. Terms apply.
Back on the Drive with Sam Piper, ESPN Radio 93.5. I want to get you a little bit of Brett Bielema from yesterday, providing an update on spring practice. Probably won't be able to play the whole thing, but we haven't gotten any of his thoughts here from the recent week, so I want to be able to get you some listening from the head man, Brett Bielema, right now.
The fifth week of spring ball, practice number 13 tonight. We did back off a little bit. We had a really productive scrimmage on Friday. Got almost 60 reps of live reps, tackle football. Got out of it pretty healthy. So kind of thought tonight we made all of our corrections. We had meetings early this morning, had another round of meetings tonight, kind of had some install. Really kind of want to have a good kind of football specific. We did some very specific things in the punting game and very specific things offense, defense. So to get that installed, and then we should have a pretty good Wednesday morning practice and a pretty good Friday evening practice to call it a day. So really the only injury thing from Friday night, I'm sure you saw B. Henderson out there with limp. He had a boot on. Pretty mild ankle sprain. There's actually a good chance he's going to practice tomorrow. So got out of it healthy. Been to this point, been able to be very fortunate to get out of everything to this point as good as we can be. The part that we're kind of banking on is when we come back in June, really the last week in May, first week of June. Everybody that's been limited in spring ball should be pretty much fully active and engaged in our summer program. And then by July 1st, everybody should have a clean bill of health running into it. Whereas last year we had a couple guys that kind of dragged into the first week of fall camp, but like where we're at right now. With that, open up for questions.
You have a lot of depth guys in that, scrimmages you've seen.
Yeah.
Who have you really seen step up and show you some in those scrimmages?
I'd say offensive line, some of our depth. Brandon Henderson and Brandon Hansen both have been in a really good battle at right guard. I thought those two guys are really, probably playing as good a football as they've ever played. There's a lot of guys that, even though they might have played a little bit for us, I thought they've had their best friend, Captain Jones, Malik Elzy, Hudson Clement had his best scrimmage by far. Derek Stoffel, so some of those transfer guys are really kind of taking their own now. No doubt Tommy Waugh had his best scrimmage on the defense side of the ball. Leon Lowry continued to take a step forward, but there's some other guys. Grant Bierman, some of the freshmen have really, both RJ and Amar, two Florida kids on the perimeter that have really continued to shine and do some good things. You saw him out there a little bit today, but Crimmins, the punter, is really a really good player. very excited to watch him continue to grow and be good. I think, there's some periphery guys that, are going to give us a lot of depth. Khalil Ballantyne continues to look very impressive. We limited Josh and Aiden from the scrimmage, so to see Khalil get in there and do some really good things in the scrimmage, it's impressive. He was running with our first group when that group was out there. I would say Ethan, our quarterback transfer, and also Carson Boyd. Trey did some good things too, actually, all three of those quarterbacks. We didn't run Luke all that much in the scrimmage. We didn't do it in the live scrimmage. So those other guys, I thought looked pretty good.
What was it a lot from Aaron and Corey both about Tanner Heckel, especially
Yeah.
as he's moved to corner? What have you liked about what he's shown you this spring?
Yeah, Tanner's just a really good ball player. When we signed him, we really took him as an athlete that was very impressive. And last year, I made Dish and those guys start running him as a special teams guy. I just saw he had really good ball sense. And then Aaron was trying to, but I said, let's move him to corner and see if he can play it, right? And every indication is that he can. I'm super excited. He's a very opportunistic player. He takes coaching very well. He's very tough. I would say he gets to watch Torrey Cox, who he kind of shares a similar body type with, and Torrey really uses his leverage really well as a corner. So, I like where he's at. But the guy that's really probably been the most impressive is Jaheim Clark. Juice has really had a nice spring. Torrey's played extremely well. And also Caleb Patterson was a little bit limited with a hamstring, but he's been back the last 2 weeks, and all four of those guys have been pretty impressive.
What was the difference between Saturday scrimmage and the one you had the previous weekend?
Friday. Yeah. But, the week before, we did a lot more scrimmage, but it wasn't live tackle football. We did a lot of ones and twos, and then we probably not quite half, but I would say we doubled the amount of full scrimmage reps. Made it all first and 10, second down, third down. We had some red area. We had some move the ball. The week before, it was all pretty much early downs, regimented, some third down stuff, but there wasn't a lot of move the ball, and there was a lot of move the ball Saturday or Friday.
You can't talk specifics, but how the recruiting weekend go?
Yeah, we've had 2 back-to-back really good recruiting weekends. A lot of credit to our recruiting staff, but also my coaches. We've been kind of wearing double hats. You get done with a scrimmage on Friday and jump right into a recruiting meal that night. But Champaign kind of sells itself. I can't tell you how effective the people of our community, as our guys are out, and whether it be at a restaurant or the way they make them feel in their hotel, bumping into people. It's just, I think Champaign is very proud of their football team right now, and that always is going to help us. We had about a half a dozen guys the first week. We had 9 official visitors. Really, I thought it was kind of interesting, like the way our roster is made up is we have a predominant strong force of a 5-hour radius around Champaign, and then we do a lot in Jersey and Florida, and this week was almost an exact replica of that. It was 5 Illinois, 2 Jersey, and 2 Florida, and I think that kind of, in a microcosm, is our roster.
I almost hate to speak the words transfer portal,
Yeah.
but it is that time of year.
Yeah. When's that?
Do you have any feel for how this may affect your team?
Good question. I think in the transfer portal, you have to understand where it is and when it's coming. But there's been times where I thought guys might be getting in and they didn't. I thought there would be guys that weren't that did. We've had a lot of what I always say is it's much better to be proactive than reactive, right? So we've had a lot of proactive conversations with guys, but the portal starts Wednesday. I don't know if we'll have anybody come in before then, but it's starting to happen in college football. I'm not oblivious to what's going on at other places, but our guys know open door policy. I meet with all of our guys twice a year. I think that's proactively. There's a lot of places that don't do that once, let alone twice. So I think to build a bridge with those kids right now is really important. I tell our coaches all the time, let's to continue to build bridges, don't buy boats, right? Like try to continue to connect people with one another. Every time we walk in this building, the way you say hi and the way you say goodbye, you're building or tearing down a relationship, and I think our kids respect that. But what will be interesting for us is we do have a few roster spots available, right? And some things that, as this thing unfolds, we'll try to build as strong a roster. I felt really good about where our roster is at right now, but college football is changing. There's going to be the roster rules, I think, of 105. Hopefully that ruling is going to be coming out here sooner or later, and that's going to kind of continue to put a spin on things that we've never seen before.
Fred, we saw Cole Russell tonight in green. At
Yeah.
least to be able to go through some things. Are you
Yeah.
encouraged about how he's kind of gone through this whole
So
thing?
we had 2 groups. We had the quarterback club here in town, and we had the Icon group. And one of the, I don't know which group she was with, but it had a young man came up to me and goes, "Coach, what's the green jersey means?" And I go, "It means they can't be hit." So Cole's been clear for everything non-contact. So that's why you see the quarterbacks in green, right? Like so Cole has been a kind of a steady progress. We actually I want to say the first week he jumped in and did some things, and we wasn't quite where we wanted to be. So today was a really big day. I was busting him up today in the stretch line. Him and Luke was busting him up, Aiden Lawfrey. But Cole is a very impressive, good-looking kid that we know a lot about because we recruited him, and he got in a good summer, and then he got in 5 practices, but we really haven't had him since. So. We're excited to see anything we can here, but he'd be another guy in June. It's got to be a big month for us.
Brett, what do you think of a second open window for transfers? Is this something that needs to change long term? Or?
Yeah, with the portal window, I just kind of say this, just tell me the rules and I can play by it, right? I have feelings. There's no doubt in my mind it's probably one of the most exciting things, in my opinion, in my career since I've been in college football. The addition of the portal in combination with NIL/revenue share, it just makes the playing field so much more even. Even when I was, I distinctly remember being a head coach of Wisconsin. We had won a bunch of games, and we went into a Big Ten meeting, and I was mad because we had won more games during the window of time we were talking about than anybody else in our conference, even more than Ohio State. And they were all talking about 4 teams, right, that we had beaten, one of the things Coach Alvarez, who was a guiding light in my life for a long time, he said, you can't change 50 years of history, right? And I'll never forget that, right? Because as much as you do in the short term, you can't really